I'm your host, Carolyn Solo, LCSW, EMDR therapist, and mom of 3 daughters. Thank you for joining me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Future Template Parent podcast. I'm your host, Carolyn Solo, and I'm very excited to have with me today Maria Lulo, who is the CEO of Mentaya, which some of you have probably heard of and some of you may not have. And Mentaya is a tool that private pay therapists use to help their clients get reimbursed by insurance without going in-network. It handles everything from benefits checking to claims submission end to end, so therapists can stay out of network and still make their services more accessible to clients. So I know most of the people listening to this are private pay to some degree, so I know this is of interest. But first of all, before we kind of dive into Mentaya and intensives a little bit, Maria, could you tell us a little bit? First of all, thank you for being here. And second of all, could you tell us a little bit more about Mentaya? Like how long has it been around? How did it get started? That kind of thing.
Of course. Thank you so much, Carolyn, for that wonderful introduction. I'm really excited to be here on your podcast today and talk a little bit more about Mentaya and how we can help therapists who are out of network or private pay. And happy to share more about kind of our story. So we started back in 2020. Our founder, Christine, at the time was working at Google. She lives in San Francisco. She's very inside the tech space in SF. And during that time, there were a lot of mental health care companies starting to rise up. And a trend that she saw is a lot of them had a very similar mission to something that was close to her heart, which was to make mental health care more affordable and more accessible. But as she started diving deeper into the companies that were out there and talking to therapists, she realized that oftentimes the cost of affordability came to therapists themselves. So a lot of these companies were, making therapists go in network or charge less for their sessions or this or that. And simultaneously, she was also struggling to submit her own Superbill. So she was like, okay, well, there seems to be something here that can be a win-win solution for therapists who don't necessarily want to go the in-network route, but for clients who do want to use their insurance. And out of that idea, Mentaya was kind of born. We started with something super simple, which was, replacing Superbills and making it easier for therapists and for clients. And as we started growing the business, we saw that it was just such a necessity that was out there. And I joined Mentaya right after college. I studied psychology at Duke, and I have always had a passion for mental health care. I wanted to be a therapist myself. So I was working in a special ed school when I came into contact with Christine. And again, I just saw the impact that Mentaya had in so many therapists' lives and so many of their clients' lives that I was like, okay, there's something here that we can do to create this win-win solution for both therapists and their clients. And since then, we've grown so much and have helped thousands of clients get money back from insurance to be able to continue seeing their therapist.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I didn't realize that it sort of started during COVID when there was such that makes sense that it really took off then.
Yeah, because a lot of more people after COVID, I think, just wanted to use their insurance. Therapy started being covered more and more. So they were like, okay, this is an option for me out there. But again, more and more therapists did want to go the private pay route, didn't necessarily want to go through the billing and the credentialing process with insurance. So that's kind of the gap that we saw during that time.
Yeah, and I think we'll probably get into this later, but I think there's so many issues beyond the logistical ones for therapists with insurance being in network, and that can just make it really challenging to have a practice that is sustainable for therapists. And so that's one of the huge issues as well, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And it's not a therapist issue or a client issue, like neither one is responsible.
Exactly. It's a systems issue.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think the therapist and the client, it can almost make them adversarial, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. And I will say too, full disclosure, I use Mentaya in my own practice, and I certainly prefer it to having to send Superbills to people and have them not know what to do with them. It's really easy to like click 2 buttons and then it's done. And then, I don't have to do anything more. They don't have to do anything more. So it is really, really helpful.
Yeah.
And
I
go
love
ahead.
that.
I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna add on to that. Just like for the people who don't know Mentaya or don't know what we do, we essentially replace the Superbill function and handle everything that has to do with claim submission from end to end. So we verify benefits. A lot of clients and therapists out there just assume, okay, I don't take insurance. That means my clients probably can't use it. And clients also have that misconception a lot of the times. So we're here to form that educational piece and component of, okay, not necessarily just because your client isn't credentialed or doesn't take it directly, you can still use it. We have a benefits checker that verifies clients' benefits in a matter of seconds. And then the second part of our services is what Carolyn was mentioning, where we replace the Superbill function. Happy to talk more about this later, but the Superbill is great in theory for a lot of therapists because they can just give clients an automatically generated Superbill from their EHR. But in practice, a lot of clients just don't know where to start with the Superbill and aren't submitting it. Yep. So what we do is we replace the Superbill function. You just verify the sessions in Mentaya. Like Carolyn said, it takes 2 clicks, and we take care of the rest to make sure that you don't have to deal with insurance or the follow-ups, and neither does your client. So you're really providing that premium service for your clients to be able to get reimbursed and use their insurance, but you're not involved with them at all.
Right. And just for therapists who don't know, like I get paid immediately. Like I don't have to wait as on the therapist end to get whatever verification or whatever through insurance. I get paid immediately. Eventually the client's claims go through, but I'm not waiting on that to happen to get paid. So
exactly.
Yeah. So that's nice too. Because that's also an issue with insurance is that sometimes you're chasing claims, as I've heard. I've never been in network, but it seems like, the amount of work and stress is really, really difficult.
Yeah, I've heard horror stories. So I talk a lot with like different therapists. That was my previous role at Mentaya, where I would just be like client facing, talking to therapists who were thinking about using Mentaya or just like in general wanting to hear therapists' journeys. And there are so many therapists out there who are just like, I can't take it anymore with insurance. Like they've clawed back thousands and thousands of dollars after not paying me for months. And it's just, like I said, it's a really big system-wide issue. And it's something that there's always just a huge pain point with insurance.
And there's, an issue that I talk about a lot is that the sustainability of being a therapist, period, is really tenuous for a lot of people. And there's lots of therapists who quit the field because of so many things, but one of them being these kinds of financial strains and the stresses of like, if someone claws back tens of thousands of dollars from your practice and you're barely getting by anyway, like it's just, that's the end, you're probably done for. And that's just awful. So, yeah.
It really is.
Well, I do want to just slightly switch gears to talking about, because, this podcast is about intensive therapy. And so longer sessions than most of the time the therapists you work with are probably working with. So I know I got a bunch of people saying, ask them how we can get what are the options for sessions that are longer than 60 minutes and how does that process look? And are there any important like snags that are to watch out for?
Yeah, this is a great question, and one that we also get a lot because we have a lot of, EMDR therapists on Mentaya who are submitting for those longer sessions. Unfortunately, as of, I want to say 2023 risk-free, the AMA stopped reimbursing for those longer sessions.
Right.
So the highest billing code that you can use is a 90837. So it's not that you can't bill for the longer sessions. It's that insurance is only going to reimburse for those 60 minutes. So
right.
that is the highest billing code that you can use. So our recommendation is to, even if it's a 3-hour intensive that you're doing, bill for that code, because your client is going to get reimbursed something, and something's always going to be better than nothing.
Right.
The other thing that I would highly recommend against is some people try and submit, for example, like 2 90837s in a single day. And even though, like, in theory that could maybe work, it almost always gets flagged and denied by insurances.
Yeah.
They really don't like when you submit 2 claims on the same day. So that is our recommendation. It's to bill for the 90837. But I am curious, Carolyn, since you do use Mentaya, to hear about your experience in billing for those specific types of codes.
Yeah, I mean, that's usually what I have done. I didn't know if there were other options, but so what I have done so far, and I don't know if this is, if I'm doing it correctly, but like, I will just put it down as a 60-minute session and bill, even if it's been, 4 hours or whatever. I just put it in as if it were 60 minutes. I'm not sure if that's would make a difference either way, if I put in the actual length of the session or because I always sort of assumed that I was only going to get reimbursed for that first hour. So there was no point in kind of like putting the however many minutes down, but I'm not sure if that's correct or if it even matters.
That's what we see most EMDR therapists doing. It's just billing for that 60-minute session.
Yeah.
I do wish there was a better answer, and who knows, I think insurance companies change their policies so much that they might start reimbursing again, or being able to add on codes and modifiers for you to be able to do that. But our experience right now has just been billing for that 90837. And again, your client isn't going to get reimbursed for those full 3 hours, but they're still going to get something back. And that's going to allow them to reinvest that money in therapy and continue seeing you as their therapist.
And it's better than nothing, of course. And the other sort of follow-up question I have is that a lot of the therapists that I work and I do this with, and I do this myself, is we'll see someone for like 15 hours in 1 week, sort of over 3 days or something like that. So could we bill 3 different 90837s, like Monday, Wednesday, Friday? Would most insurances, I mean, I'm sure it depends, but.
It does depend on the insurance, but as long as it's billed on different days. And if you're seeing them over the course of, you said 15 hours over a week.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely something that you could do. If you're seeing them on different dates during that week, you can bill separately for those different dates. What we don't recommend is billing twice on the same day.
Right. Got it. Okay. And also too, a lot of therapists I know will do like an intake one day, maybe a week prior, and then they would do the 3 days. And then maybe a month later, they'll do a follow-up. So they could bill 5 different hours.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yes, for sure. They can do that. And the other thing that's great about Mentaya is, with us, everything that we submit is risk-free. So if for whatever reason a client's claim is coming back and they're saying, hey, we actually don't accept this particular code, or we don't accept this or that. Again, we do our due diligence to make sure before you submit that they do. Mm-hmm. But if for whatever reason they come back saying that they are going to accept it, even if we appeal, even if we resubmit, then we'll refund our processing fees in full to your client. And that way, your client didn't struggle with the actual submitting of the Superbill, figuring out how to do it. So that's part of the reason why we're here. Insurance is complicated, and they have all of these different rules and regulations based on not just the company, but the particular plan. And we've submitted so many claims at this point. It's crazy that we have that much data and have established relationships with certain payers to be able to really direct you and your client as to what are best practices for that specific insurance company and CPT code that you're submitting to.
Yeah, that's so true that we don't have that experience, right? We don't know what we're doing. And so it feels like a part of our job that we're supposed to know how to do, but nobody really does. And outsourcing it to people who have the experience is so much better, I would say.
That's what we're here for. I mean, you guys already have so much on your plate, 15-hour intensives over a week. Like, that is enough work for you guys to be handling. You don't need to be worrying about, okay, is insurance going to accept this or not? Like, how is this going to affect the quality of care for my client, this or that?
So another question that I know will come up for people is a lot of therapists, and I encourage them to do this when they're doing intensives, will charge a much higher, sometimes even like double or more rate for an hour of an intensive versus just a regular standalone therapy session. So for example, if someone's normal 60-minute rate was $200, maybe they charge $400 for an hour of an intensive. If they're still submitting it through Mentaya under 90837, is that going to limit the amount of reimbursement? Is that going to change anything? I know that's something people are wondering.
Great question. We do get this a lot as well. And it really depends on how the therapist decides to bill for it. Since, for example, if you're doing a 3-hour intensive and you're just billing for that specific hour, then you can just put how much you would have charged the patient for that hour when you're billing for it. Some therapists do put the full amount.
Okay.
They are objective, and I'm going to be super honest, like, they are going to get reimbursed less than like your typical amount if insurance in an ideal world would be reimbursing for that full hour intensive. And this all kind of comes down to insurance companies' allowed amount. So insurance companies have what's called an allowed amount or a usual customary rate. They have all these different names for it. And it depends on that specifically how much a client is going to get reimbursed. So let's use the example that you said. If, for example, a therapist rate is usually $200 per session and the insurance company's allowed amount is also $200, then they're going to get reimbursed, let's say 60% of that $200 versus if the therapist charges $400 for an intensive, the client is still just going to get 60% of $200 because $200 is like the maximum amount that insurance is able to get to reimburse. So that, I would say, is the main thing that would affect the amount. In terms of how to bill for it, that is something that is up to the therapist and the practice's discretion, like how much exactly you're going to be putting that you charged depends on like what practices you follow.
So someone could conceivably say they did a 3-hour intensive at $400 an hour. They could put in $1,200 at 90837, but it's not going to make any difference in terms of what they're going to get reimbursed. So, that makes sense. I just wanted to clarify. Insurances
do have that. Like the whole concept of an allowed amount is for insurance to like protect themselves from therapists charging, let's say, like $700 every single session for 90837s, or like, that is not something that we're going to always be reimbursing. And it's typically around, from what we've seen, the average allowed amount is from $150 to $200, depending on the specific state, CPT code, diagnosis code, and everything.
So that's really helpful and brings me to another question, which is the 90834 versus 90837 issue, right? So 90834 is 45 minutes, is my understanding, right? And then 90837 is 53 and up, I think, 53 to 60, something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
So I think people wonder, like, is one better than the other? Is there more reimbursement for one versus the other? Is there a reason for an intensive, put down one versus the other? And then also, as you probably saw in the past week, there's all this stuff going on with Alma and Aetna, and like Aetna is no longer going to reimburse 90837 at a higher rate through Alma. So I think people are just really nervous about that whole thing.
Yeah. I'll answer the question.
I know there's a lot of pieces to it.
But yeah, I think this is a really important one. Where should I start? So it's interesting because I think since we've been in business, we've constantly heard, and I want to say it's a myth, that 90837s get flagged more often by insurance companies. So a lot of therapists have that like thought of, okay, maybe I should bill a 90834 because it's on the safer side.
Right.
That hasn't been our experience. Like, we don't have any statistical significance to show that a 90837 is more risky than a 90834. Like, that has not been our experience in all of the claims that we've submitted. So generally, my advice to people is to bill for the session that happened. So I wouldn't overemphasize on cutting the session short and having it be like 45 or 50 minutes just so that you can bill for the 90834. I don't think it's worth it. Like, it's not going to be a huge statistical difference from what you're billing. And for intensives, I think the rule of thumb should generally be to bill for a 90837, just because that is the highest billing code, and that typically means that the allowed amounts for that, it's not that it's going to be larger, but you can bill more for it, and it'll be easier if insurance like flags those claims. It'll be easier to say why you charged, I don't know, $300 instead of your typical $200 for a 90834. So does that answer kind of your question? And then I'll talk about like the new Aetna situation.
Well, I'm just one quick follow-up on what you said. So you said like that insurance, if you're a therapist normally billing like just regular sessions and you bill them at 200, and then you have this other session that you bill at 300 because it's an intensive, is that something that could be an issue? Because, a lot of therapists do both, right? They do intensive sessions, but they also have regular ongoing weekly clients. Like, is that something that could be a problem?
So this is where documentation does become important. It typically isn't an issue. And for out of network, that's kind of the beauty of it. Like, you're running your own practice.
Right.
It might not even be that you're billing for an intensive. It might just be that it's the time of year where you have fee increases, or this is happening or that is happening. So typically, if all goes well, it won't get flagged by insurance companies. But if, for example, for whatever reason, the claims get audited or they start asking for medical necessity, which is a little bit more common with these types of intensives, then you have documentation to say exactly why this happened. And at least when we submit medical records for review, they almost always get accepted. We have in our help center kind of an outline process of what should go on a medical record for you to just show medical necessity and show, okay, this is why I'm charging this amount for these types of rates. Again, every insurance plan is different. So some might flag it, others might not. Our general consensus is that rate, since it is going to be an intensive, it isn't going to trigger, that by itself isn't going to trigger something. If it does, and you need to submit medical records, that's the important of just having everything documented as to like why something changed from X to Y.
And right. So like you said about the 90837 and 90834 thing and what are you guys hearing, seeing? What are your thoughts?
It is interesting. We got a lot of emails this week.
I'm sure.
Just a lot of people alarmed by. So, for everyone who is listening in who might not know, recently Aetna announced that it's going to stop reimbursing 90837 at a premium rate for in-network providers. So, this affects a lot of providers that like are in Alma because it's essentially cutting the effective pay for that code. I forget exactly how much it's going down by. But the TLDR is that, this is alarming, obviously, especially with like reimbursement rates as hard as they are. And platforms like Alma really try to negotiate these best types of rates for therapists who are in network. But I think that just goes into the wider systemic issues of in network that it's someone else determining your rate, right? Like it's someone else saying, okay, this is how much you can charge for a particular session. And that's why it doesn't actually impact out of network reimbursement right now. Because for out of network reimbursement, you set your own rates. You're a private pay clinician. You set your own rates. You can, have a sliding scale at any point. You can raise your rates at any point. You can change the structure of your practice at any point. And, you're the boss. You're the CEO of your practice. You're the one that determines that. And even if insurance changes, okay, the reimbursement guidelines or this or that, it's not going to directly affect how much you're getting paid. It might affect how much your client is getting reimbursed. Right. Not this specifically. What we're seeing with the Aetna news, from what I've read and from what I've spoken to with different payer representatives, is it's only affecting in-network reimbursement. Okay. It's not affecting out-of-network reimbursements. But that does come with the caveat that, insurance plans do constantly change their reimbursement rates. And again, I try and be as honest as possible when it comes with insurance, because they are really tricky and they're really weird sometimes. And I'm not going to lie and say, we've never seen this with out-of-network reimbursement. We see it all the time. We see sometimes insurance companies' allowed amount is 200, and then for whatever reason, the next payout, they change it and it's 180 allowed amount. And then they change it back and it's suddenly 210. And we ask them, okay, but why exactly, like, why did this happen? So we can track it and we can have more information and everything. And they just don't have a clear answer. They don't, they don't
really need to.
They don't know themselves. They can't really like track or pinpoint as to why. Right. But with out of network, that's kind of the beauty of it, that clients are getting reimbursed and they're able to use that reimbursement and reinvest it in therapy. But ultimately, they do know that they are responsible for your full fee at the time of their appointment, and they have that conversation with you, and they're able to do all of that.
Yeah. And that actually leads me to another question I had about sort of in-network versus, I don't know, like say you have a client who has like I can't remember the terminology exactly, but like a PPO versus an HMO, right? Mm-hmm. So an HMO being like, you have to use in-network providers if you want to get any reimbursement, is my understanding. Do those clients ever can they get, like, do HMOs have any out-of-network benefits, or does that vary widely?
So it varies. I would say the majority of clients with an HMO plan don't have out-of-network benefits. Okay. There are certain plans that I've been surprised by that, a client that has an HMO uses our benefits checker and they say, okay, I actually do have reimbursement. I would say those are more rare types of cases. Okay. The other thing that we've been able to work with HMO plans is clients are able to get single case agreements. So especially with intensives, I imagine that this is more common. A lot of the times, if clients can provide evidence that there's no other provider in the region that can give them the specific therapy that they're seeking out for, they can get an exception by, I think it's their primary care provider. And then we're able to submit those claims in Mentaya. They just put in
okay.
the single case agreement number, and we handle everything after that.
But the client has to get that set up with their primary care provider first before they.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. I've never heard of that before. Oh.
Yeah. We do have more information on it in our help center as well, just for like clients who are interested and want to see what that process is like. And again, it is common for clients who are seeking out a very specialized type of therapy that might not, a therapist in their region might not necessarily.
Oh, okay. And so people should at least just ask about it. It's worth asking.
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Well, there's one last question I had on my list that I want to make sure we get to. But being mindful of time, I know. So I think something that confuses people and confuses me at times is, the deductible, right? So, it'll be like, this client has a $1,000 deductible. And you think, oh, great. Like once we have 5 sessions at $200 an hour, they've met their deductible. But that is not the case in most situations, right? It's more like once they've met the allowable, well, you explain it to me because I'm not sure.
Yes. Great question. So part of that, it has to do with the allowed amount, right? Yes. So again, the allowed amount is the amount that an insurance company determines is the maximum amount that they can be reimbursed. So if, for example, their allowed amount is 180 or 150, it's not going to take the client exactly 5 sessions to meet their deductible. It might take them 6 or 7. It just depends on that specific piece of information from the insurance company. And then once they meet their deductible is when clients are able to start to get reimbursed. Okay. So after those 5 or 6 sessions, all of those sessions are going towards their deductible. They won't be able to get reimbursed. But after that, then they start getting reimbursed depending on what their eligibility is. It can be up to 80%, sometimes it's 60% of the insurance company's allowed amount.
Right. And that's the other important thing too, is that just because they've reached their deductible, and if the allowable amount is 100 and your rate's 200, your client's going to get back 60% or whatever of the 100, not the full rate. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think a lot of people get confused by that.
Yeah. And we also get a lot of questions and hesitations about just deductibles in general, because they're like, oh, I have an $1,000 deductible or I have a $2,000 deductible. Like, it's not even worth me submitting claims. It doesn't make sense. That's a big conception that a lot of clients have. But the reality is, if you're seeing a therapist consistently since the beginning of the year, then chances are you are going to meet that deductible and some, and you're going to get reimbursed. So it's always better to front load that. We do have warnings in place if we really think that your deductible is unreachable. Like, there's some clients that, have a $7,000 deductible, and it's like, okay, really speak with your provider, see if you're going to meet it. Yeah. Maybe you have other out-of-network expenses, like maybe your dermatologist or your physical therapist is also out-of-network, and that can count towards your deductible as well.
It all goes together.
Exactly. So it's all very like plan and patient dependent. But yes, the general rule of thumb, especially if you've been seeing a therapist since the beginning of the year, is that you're going to meet your deductible, and you should start submitting those claims so you can start getting reimbursed.
And any out-of-network service that people are getting, they should submit those claims as well, because that's all going to help them reach their deductible.
All ladders up. So if you have any, and that's the issue with Superbills. That's why in Mentaya, just as a sneak peek, we are in the future looking to see if we expand to other out-of-network services. Just because submitting Superbills, it's hard. It's something,
no matter what it is,
paper that just kind of gets lost after your provider gives it to you. You're just like, okay, what do I do with this now? Am I supposed to fax it? Am I supposed to email it in? And that's honestly, that piece of submitting the Superbill is the number one dropout point. Like,
I'm sure it is.
clients just don't know what to do with it.
And the mental load of just life means that like if there's anything that has a little bit of a barrier, it just drops off.
Yeah, that's how it works.
Well, I want to be mindful of your time, but I just wanted to, first of all, thank you so much for coming. And this was so helpful. And also, is there anything that you want to share about like how people can learn more about Mentaya or anything like that that you want anyone listening to know before we close?
Yeah. So signing up for Mentaya is really easy. It's free. So I encourage everyone listening in, if you're curious about the things that we've talked about, to just create an account, mentaya.com. You sign up as a therapist, play around with it. And if you have any questions whatsoever, we have an incredible support team that's here to answer and walk you through it. Support@mentaya.com. And I encourage everyone listening in to create an account, start having those conversations with your clients. I always say, like, that's the best way to know whether or not Mentaya is going to work for you. Like, just talk to 3 clients that you've given Superbills to this year and ask them, hey, have you submitted it? And if the answer is no, invite them into Mentaya so we can make sure that they're getting reimbursed. And
that is I like that. Ask 3 clients. That's really, And on the client end, I have heard from my clients, it's very easy to sign up. So they don't find it difficult at all.
It's super easy. And on the client's end, it's set it and forget it. Clients create an account. They don't need to do anything else. And on your end, it's really as easy as just verifying, okay, I actually had this session with my client today. Go ahead and submit the claim.
It's
and
very easy.
We take care of it. So I'm really excited to have more people join. And Carolyn, thank you so much for having me today. This has been a wonderful conversation. I hope it was insightful for the people listening.
Definitely. I know people will find it very useful. So I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much.